بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. We continue our discussion about causality. Today we have a very important discussion, which is also one of those discussions that are somehow controversial. So different philosophers have different opinions about this. But as much as it's mentioned here, I think would be agreeable. And there is one more lesson for causality, which is on predestination and freedom of will, that we may have it for next week, inshallah. As you remember, we said, yes, we said according to Aristotle, there are four types of cause. Al-illatul fa'iliyah, al-illatul ghaa'iyyah, al-illatul maddiyah, al-illatul suriyah. Yeah? So, al-illatul fa'iliyah is the originating cause. Al-illatul ghaa'iyyah is the end. Al-illatul maddiyah is material cause. Al-illatul is the formal cause. So we want to focus on al-illatul ghaa'iyyah. Before I go into the discussion, remember something. Maybe it is not very clearly mentioned here, but you should remember it. Philosophers use two terms which look similar, but they are very different. Ghaya and al-illatul ghaa'iyyah. If you want to use them accurately, ghaya comes after action. Al-illatul ghaa'iyyah is the reason for action that the agent considers. For example, I want to rest. I make a chair so that I can sit and rest. Or I buy a chair. Making the chair or buying the chair is my action. Why I decided to make a chair or buy a chair? Why I did decide? What was the reason? To have rest. So what motivated me to do this action was to have rest. Had it not been that I had this in my mind, I would not have done it. Like one day before, 1 week before, I was there, I didn't do this. Why I did it now? Because I wanted to have rest. But actual having rest comes when? After the chair is made. So al-illatul ghaa'iyyah comes before action. Actually, if you look carefully, al-illatul ghaa'iyyah not only comes before action, comes before what? Before? No. Even before action. Before action. Which illah? Fa'iliyah. Al-illatul ghaa'iyyah indeed comes before al-illatul fa'iliyah. It is al-illatul ghaa'iyyah that makes al-illatul fa'iliyah complete and then leads to action, and then action leads to ghaya, to that end. Okay? Therefore, having rest as an action, as a reality comes late. Having rest as an idea comes first. So you understand the difference between tasawwur ghaya and the actual ghaya. You conceive ghaya, you think of ghaya, it motivates you. Even still we don't have chair, but thinking of having rest on chair makes me decide to make the chair. And when I make the chair and I sit on the chair, then I actually have rest. Do you understand the difference then? So if you see in some books they use them interchangeably, that's not very accurate. If you want to use it very accurately, al-ghaa'iyyah comes after action. Al-illatul ghaa'iyyah, as you can understand from its name, is one of the causes. It comes before. Did you understand this? Yes. Okay, so we can go home. But still we want to learn something more. Okay. So, there is a discussion here in the book about the relation between ghaya and fi'l. The author says, it is true for all types of cause and effect to say, if illah did not exist or had not existed, ma'lul also was not existing. Do you accept? Without cause, ma'lul cannot exist. What about the opposite? Can we say without ma'lul, illah could not exist? Pardon? We say it depends. What type of ma'lul? If you mean ma'lul as, for example, a creature which is created by God, or some action that we do, yes. Without that, the illah can exist. But if you mean by ma'lul ghaya, that ghaya somehow can be needed for having illah. Why I say somehow? Because I'm not talking about ghaya by itself. I'm talking about considering ghaya, thinking of ghaya. Okay? So, illah in its existence doesn't need ma'lul to exist, but sometimes for illah to become complete and actually functioning, we need to think of ma'lul. If it's not our thinking of ma'lul and wanting ma'lul, we would not do this. So this is something that it's special about ghaya and al-illatul fa'iliyah. So, yes.
Can you clarify what you actually mean by ghaya? Ghaya is the end point, isn't it?
Ghaya means what this action would lead to. What is the result of this? Destination is good, but not always, For example, having rest is not destination. It's a result. Because of this, some philosophers have said this idea, which is nice. They say, al-illatul ghaa'iyyah mutammimun lil-illatil fa'iliyah. And some have said, al-illatul ghaa'iyyah sharikun lil-illatil fa'iliyah. Some have said, al-illatul ghaa'iyyah completes. Al-illatul fa'iliyah means illatul fa'iliyah without illatul ghaa'iyyah is not enough. And some say it's like partner. Make the same thing. Means they have to be together. If you have a very strong person, very strong, his physical power, intellectual power, willpower, very strong. But this person would not do anything unless he has al-illatul ghaa'iyyah. He has something in his mind that he wants to achieve. Yeah? So is existence of illat fa'ili enough? No, there must be al-illat al-ghaa'iyyah. Okay?
So it's like what motivates the creator to create.
Yes. Then he says, maybe up to this session, you were always thinking of the cause and effect, channel or hierarchy as something from top to the bottom, one way. You have the ultimate cause, then lower than that, then it comes down till we reach the last cause, which is making the effect. But now you realize that also there is something from the other side. It is true that the cause creates effect, but also there is something in effect that affects the cause. Yeah? So it's not that current events lead to future events only. Yes, it is true that current events lead to future events. But also remember that future events also bring current events into existence. Why you do this? For example, you go to primary school so that you can go to secondary school. Then you go to secondary school so that you can go to the, university. You get an undergraduate degree, postgraduate degree. Okay? So you can say, my study in primary school prepared me for studying in secondary school. My study in secondary school led to studying in undergraduate. But on the other hand, you can say it was my interest in postgraduate studies that motivated me to do undergraduate study, and my interest in undergraduate motivated to do secondary. So you see, although there is a sequence from cause to effect, and that effect is the cause for the next effect, but also there is a yes, there is an opposite or reverse sequence in your mind, of course. So it's not something complicated, There are things that everyone understands, but when you want to articulate it, maybe it becomes difficult. Otherwise, you all do it every day. You consider something, you do it, then after you do it, you have it. But why you did it? Because you wanted to have it. Okay? So, this is the relation between al-illatul ghaa'iyyah and al-illatul fa'iliyyah. Now, there are questions. There are serious questions about al-illatul ghaa'iyyah. Is there al-illatul ghaa'iyyah for all types of actions? For all types of agents? We said before that for human beings, this seems acceptable, that human beings function in this way. They think of something, they have an aim, they have an end, and then they do it to have it. But can we say, even, for example, animals, plants, non-living beings, for example, when water does something, when wind does something, there is end here? Or if you put a seed in the soil and it grows, can we say the seed had the intention or ghaya in mind to become an apple tree? We can say that it led to having apple tree, but can we say seed wanted to reach the point of becoming apple tree? So this is a question. So we want to say where we have al-illatul fa'liyah. For our normal actions, yes. But what about non-living beings? What about even human beings, but not in the actions that we do it carefully? You know, we have some actions that philosophers call, these are like abath, vain. We do things in vain. You know, you see sometimes men play with their beard. Yeah, even maybe they don't notice. They play. What's the benefit? Or, you know, with tasbih. Sometimes you do zikr, but sometimes you are just playing, and even you don't have any, maybe careful attention. Where is ghaya here, or al-illatul ghaa'iyyah? Even here there is illatul ghaa'iyyah. There seems to be nothing that you want to achieve. You know, sometimes people just walk, they don't want to go anywhere. Yeah? It's not even exercise. It's not even that, for example, they don't want to be here. You know, sometimes you walk because you want to be somewhere. Sometimes you walk because you don't want to be here. Yeah. And sometimes you walk because you want to do exercise. All of them are acceptable as ghaya. But sometimes you walk and you don't have any intention. You are just walking without any plan, without any intention. So this is another question. What about here? The third question is about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about God, wajibul wujud. Can we say wajibul wujud also considers an end, and because of reaching that end, he does something? This is the question that we actually discuss in theology, in Khuda Shanasi, about knowing God. So we don't discuss it right now. But alhamdulillah, on different occasions we address this in Kalam, in Divine Justice. We were just talking about this, whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has purpose and qaraz in his actions. Yeah, so you are familiar with this idea. Just on Wednesday also we discussed it. We had it in Baba Hadi Ash also. But here we don't discuss it now. The book says it's for discussion about God. But the first two questions about human beings with respect to what type of actions? Those actions which seem to be done in vain, without intention, without any aim, just to do it. Secondly, with respect to unintelligent agents, whether animals, for example, or plants, or insects, or non-living beings like water, wind, this type of things, electricity. Can we say they have also al-illatul ghaa'iyyah? So these are two major questions that we have to discuss. First, about the actions for human beings in unintentional actions, or what looks like unintentional, like playing with your fingers, with your beard, with your hair, you know, playing with tasbih, this type of actions. So to answer this, we need to make few introductory points. First, these points are also by themselves important. Not only clarify this question, but also it's important for you to understand the way human agency works. First, philosophers say that human beings have three types of faculties or principles for action. One is al-quwwatul muharrika or al-amila, moving power or faculty. The second is al-quwwatu shawqiyyah, motivational faculty or power. The third is al-quwwatu al-mudraka, perceiving faculty or power. Example makes it clear. When you want to go somewhere, what happens? First, al-quwwatul mudraka gets involved. For example, tomorrow we want to go to a trip, inshallah. Okay? As a human being, the first thing is that your idrak must be involved. So you start thinking, processing this idea. What are the advantages, disadvantages? After you make decision to go, because you found it useful, for example, then you would start developing desire and yearning, shawq. Yes? Shawq doesn't come without understanding. Even if your understanding is mistaken, it produces shawq. Sometimes, you have shawq to go somewhere and then you realize you made mistake. But that was based on a kind of understanding that this is good for you, this is useful, this is, pleasing. So you have understanding, then al-quwwatul mudraka functions and triggers al-quwwatu shawqiyyah. Then shawq is produced. You have desire and yearning. When your shawq intensifies, then it triggers al-quwwatul muharraka or al-amila, triggers your muscles. And then you walk, you run, you lift something, you write. So first is al-quwwatul mudraka. Second is al-quwwatul al-shawqiyyah. Third is al-quwwatul muharraka aw al-amila. Okay? Also, you have to remember that these three, as I said, come one after the other in an order. Like, it's vertical, it's hierarchical. They are not in the same level. They are not horizontal. Which one is the highest? No. Mudraka. Highest, or you can say the most underlying. Means the more powerful one, or the first one, is mudraka. Mudraka triggers shawqiyyah. Shawqiyyah triggers muharrika. Okay? So, they are all important, but they don't come at the same level. Some are to precede. The other thing is, al-quwwatul mudraka also has three types. If you remember, when we were talking about different types of understanding, we said there are three types of idrak. What are those three? Al-idrak al-aqli, al-idrak al-khayali, al-idrak al-hissi. Yes? Sometimes it's through five senses: smelling, touching, seeing, hearing, tasting. This is idrak hissi. Sometimes it's khayali. Okay? You perceive something after your sensation has stopped, because khayal has different meanings. One is that understanding of the image which is stored in your archive, like understanding of softness after you touched, for example, silk. After that, this is stored in your archive, and when you understand it after sensation is stopped, this is idrak khiyali. Also, there are some types of understanding that are internal. That is also khiyali, like joy, fear, hope, happiness, sadness, this type of things. Then we have idrak aqli, which is through universal concepts. So, what we have to remember is that each of these three, and when it comes to idrak in each of its three forms, idrak hissi or aqli or khiyali, has its own ghaya. Please don't get them mixed up. So if aql is involved, you should look for ghaya for aql. If khayal is involved, you should look for ghaya for khayal. When normally people say that this action was abas or batil, it was something done in vain or false, they compare it to an action which is done out of aql. Yes, compared to that, this is vain. Otherwise, this is not in vain. If you look carefully, the person who is playing with his beard, or for example, with an object, with pen, for example, is playing. Yes, he has no aqli reason for doing this. It's not that he said to do this, I achieve this. But still, al-idrak is involved because he thought of playing with this, and this thinking of playing this brings a little pleasure, which triggered his shawq. Yeah, he doesn't want to achieve something serious by this. He doesn't want to write a paper or letter or exam. Yeah, he's just playing. But don't think this playing is done without any reason. Don't expect a very high caliber of reason, but even the reason can be just a little bit of amusement, a little bit of, making yourself, happy. Yeah? Or for example, there are people that just when there is a lecture or a speech, they just take pen and draw something. Sometimes they draw something meaningful. Sometimes they draw nothing. But even when they draw nothing, they have a purpose. But that purpose is not a high caliber purpose. But there is a purpose. What is the purpose? They want to keep themselves busy, for example, so that they don't get bored too much. Yeah? Or sometimes it's more serious. They want to, pretend that we are taking notes, Yeah.
We editing the book.
Yes. So, each of these three, al-quwwatul mudraka, in its all three types. Al-quwwatul shawqiyya, al-quwwatul muharraka, each of them has to be considered separately. Each of them has its own end. One of them leads to the other, and the last one leads to the action. Yeah? Al-quwwatul mudraka leads to quwwatul shawqiyya, triggers that. Shawq triggers muscles. Muscles make us do the action. Okay? A bit is okay. Okay.
I think what we discussed earlier was the hierarchy.
Yes.
The moving power is the idrak, right?
No. Moving is
Idea.
fa'ila. Idrak is mudraka.
Idrak is the motivation.
No, that's shawqiyya.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. Al-quwwatul mudraka. Mudraka comes from idrak, means understanding, perceiving. Shawqiyya, shawq means yearning, desire.
I got it.
Yes. And amila or muharraka is moving. Yes.
So every action that actually happens has three.
Yes. Yes.
These are all higher and the higher.
No, these are actually fa'il. Each of them is a fa'il which has its own ghaya. You know, before studying philosophy, you look at human beings as one fa'il. But after studying philosophy, you see that even human beings have different levels.
And then idrak and
You know, like when you are not familiar with, for example, with an office, you may think there is one line of managerial line. When you go into, you just know there are several levels. So human beings are not one unit. There are different levels in us.
Problem is the intention you have when you do idrak. It's the same thing which is going through mudrika, shahwiyya, to muharrika. The same intention is. So why is
So-
each one has got its own goal?
So intention is what you have it in qawwiyya mudraka. Okay, so for example, you analyzed and thought about what this action can do for you. You said, for example, by doing this, I can get reward. Okay? Then you make the intention of getting reward. But why you do this? Because you have shawq produced by the interest in having reward. Then that shawq motivates you to move muscle. Muscle moves then the body. So intention is very closely connected to the motivation. What is your motivation? And intention, therefore, is not something that you can, twist it. You cannot say, for example, I do anything and I just make my intention good. Or I do good things and I make my intention good. Your intention is the reason for which you are doing action. Yeah? It's not what you say, I do this qurbatan ilallah. That's not enough. You may say, I do this qurbatan ilallah, but what is the one that brought joy in your heart, yearning in your heart to do action? What was the reason that you decided to do this? That is your intention, even if you don't know it. Yeah? So it happens that many times we deceive ourselves, not only other people. We deceive ourselves. We do things and we think our intention is good, but it is not good. Maybe I told you this story, that a person used to look after a family, financially help them. For years he was helping them. One day they got angry at him and disrespected him and humiliated him. So he had to leave their house. When he came out, some people saw he's smiling. We heard, they are shouting at you and, swearing at you. Why you are smiling? He said, I was very much, upset. I was very much, saddened, by what they did. I didn't expect this. But at the same time, when I looked at my heart, I saw that I had not regretted helping them. I had not regretted helping them. This made me happy. Because if I had helped them so that they thank me and praise me, now I should have regretted that I have wasted. I invested where didn't lead to any profit. But now I'm not, remorseful. This is good. Yeah? This is the sign of sincerity of intention. So if you go to, for example, a place and do something for them, for example, give lecture, I don't know, do something for them. At the end, they don't show appreciation. If you say, I wish I had not given them any lecture or I had not helped them, then this shows that you were not sincere. Yeah? There is a story which is very moving. Okay. You have a joke?
It's very serious.
Okay.
Isn't it normal human nature to, when you do something nice to people,
Yes.
you just have a feeling that they'll be nice to you as well?
Yeah.
And they're not nice to you, then you feel saddened about that.
You expect
I
people.
don't expect anything outside, just be nice.
Yeah, you expect people to appreciate.
And if they're rude,
Yeah, that
if I
expectation is not a
get upset-
problem.
If I get upset, if they're rude, does that show my lack of sincerity?
No, not necessarily. But if you regret, for example, I expect people that I have helped them to appreciate, to respect me, to thank me. I expect, because this is normal, this is rational, this is their moral duty. But I don't do this so that they thank me. So the difference appears when you do and they don't appreciate, whether you are going to regret or not. If you regret, it means that it was not just you expected. You actually did it for the sake of this. Or at least this was part of the reason. 50% was for God, 50% was for being thanked. Yeah? And this is why you regret. Yes.
Sheikh, some people, they don't regret, they've done the good stuff, but it changes them. And next time they don't do the same thing for a new group of people, for example.
So why they don't do it again? If they don't do it again, because, for example, they want to do something better, they want to be more careful. For example, I spend my time on teaching some people. Okay? Then I see they don't appreciate, they don't learn anything, they don't practice, they don't learn. Then I change my policy. I say instead of teaching them, I go another place or I do something else. This doesn't mean that I'm not sincere. Because I am trying to find something more useful. I shouldn't regret what I have done in the sense that I, for example, didn't do it for the sake of Allah, so I regret. But in a sense, I am also regretting why I, invested where was not useful. This is not a problem. This type of changing your mind is not a problem. But imagine your responsibility was this. For example, Nuh alayhi salam for 950 years preached. He called people towards God. And there was no good response, only some 80 people. But did he regret? No, he didn't regret. That was the best thing he could do, and he did it. Whether people appreciate or not was not making him. But if, for example, Nuh alayhi salam was 100 years in a place and seeing no result, then he moves to another place and sees there is good result, yes, he may regret that why I didn't spend all my time here. This is not a bad thing. Yes.
Sheikh, I've always been under the impression that we're not actually accountable for the results. We're only accountable for our intention and the action.
Yes.
So if I raise my son as best I can and he becomes the companion of the Imam, for example, or if he becomes
you are not judged based on results, but this has a condition. If there was no way for you to improve the results, sometimes you do your best, then it doesn't lead to good result. But sometimes you were sincere, but you didn't make sure that you invest in the best, fertile place, productive. So here you will be judged. So as an alim, or for example, you are a charity, for example, worker, or you are, for example, a person who is generous and wants to give money, you have to always find where is most needed, most productive. Don't just say, I am sincere and I do this for the sake of God. Yes, if you do your best to find out where this should be spent, and it doesn't lead to that many good outcomes or fruits, that's not a problem. But you have to make sure that you find the most productive cases. So, the story is this. This story is very, very important. Okay, it looks very simple, but it's very important. A scholar, speaker, I don't know if it's true or not, but it doesn't matter, went to a place for preaching, for tabligh. Okay, so it was Muharram or Ramadan. After he finished his series of lectures, so he said goodbye to them, and they said goodbye. So basically there was no hadiah. So this man said to them, if you were not going to give me hadiah, why you didn't tell in the beginning? So that I make my intention for the sake of Allah and sincere. All this Muharram or months of Ramadan, I was thinking that I would be given hadiah. This story, has remained in my mind. That it's it looks funny, but it's very important. We should always do things from the beginning, thinking of this person. How much this person regrets now that he has not done it for the sake of Allah, and now he says to people, you don't give me anything, and I have not done it for the sake of Allah, so I have totally lost. So everything we do, we should have the intention of no one is going to thank me, no one is going to praise me. Yeah, indeed, I might be receiving criticism, I might be receiving, accusations, but still I want to do it for the sake of Allah. Then, inshallah, if people appreciate. If they don't appreciate, you are not lost it. But if you do it for the sake of people, and then they don't appreciate, and then you give it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's too late. Yeah? We have an example in Farsi. We say someone had a container of oil, cooking oil, and someone just kicked it without knowing, and all oil poured on the floor. He said, I give this nas to Hazrat Abul Fazl. So we say, you cannot dedicate rogan richte, means oil which is poured, to Hazrat Abul Fazl. When it was in the container and clean, that's the time to give it to Hazrat Abul Fazl. Not that it's now wasted. Okay? So, this is very important, that your intention is the one that motivates you. You cannot deceive yourself. You cannot change your intention afterwards. You cannot say, okay, this didn't work, so I make a change of my intention. No. That was the one that gave you energy to do something. That's your intention. And you have to be very careful about it. Okay. The other point is, when we say something has ghaya, something is moving towards an end, we don't mean that always these ends actually become materialized. Do you understand? So sometimes, for example, you want to make a chair to have rest, but then by the time you make the chair, someone comes and steals the chair. You couldn't rest. But this doesn't deny the fact that your ghaya was what? To have rest. Yeah? A farmer grows some products in order, for example, to use as food or to sell. Maybe there is no enough rain or, good weather, whatever. He cannot harvest anything. But this doesn't deny the fact that he had an end in his mind that motivated him to do this. Okay? So when we say to have ghaya, doesn't mean that that ghaya has actually happened. Ghaya comes at the end or may not come at the end, but considering ghaya is always important and always needed. So, when it comes to those actions that some people do, or maybe all of us sometimes do, that look, not rational or not, meaningful or productive, we should not think that there is no ghaya there. First of all, for al-quwwatul amila, there is end, which is to move our hand, for example. Al-quwwatul shawqiyah has end, which is to trigger al-quwwatul amila. Al-quwwatul mudrika is also triggering al-quwwatul shawqiyah. But al-quwwatul mudrika on the level of, for example, ihsas, just enjoying, smelling, something like this. Now we move on to the next question, which is more difficult. Does ghaya come and get involved in intelligent actions and intelligent doers and agents only? For example, for human beings only? Or we can have it for unintelligent beings as well. There is a beautiful discussion here, and you can learn this. He analyzes all the elements in human voluntary actions and mentions 6 points. After analysis, he mentions 6 points. He says, whenever we decide to do something in order to achieve an end, these 6 things are there. Let us see which of these things are essential, and then let's see those essential ones can be found in unintelligent actions or not. Okay? So, in human beings, there is nothing more than these 6. When we do something for gaining. First, the agent is human being. This is the first point. Second, the agent is aware of its action and its result. The third point, what makes the action is the will. There is will involved, irada. 4, the agent gets pleasure from reaching the end, the result. And if it doesn't get there, would have some pain. Fifth, the agent is attending to an aim. And among different things the agent can do, choose the one that leads to his aim. Six, the agent intends to meet his needs by doing this action. So there is nothing other than these six. So whenever we do something in order to get an end, these six are there. We are human beings. We are aware of our action and its result. There is will. If we get it, we will have pleasure. If we don't get the result, we would have pain. We have attention to the aim, and we choose among different options the one that leads to that aim, and we meet our needs. Okay. These six, of course, can only be found in human beings, because the first was to be a human being. But is it important to be a human being? No. To be a human being is not important in having an action for end, for ghaya. To be aware of the action is not also necessary. To have will is not necessary. To have pleasure is not necessary. The only things which are necessary actually are the last two ones. That the agent should have a line, attention to the end of this line, to destination or end of it, and wants to meet his needs. Wherever you have these two, you can say there is an agent who has an end. Even maybe not thinking about it. Maybe he's not aware of it. When, for example, let me give you this example. When embryo grows, do you see that this embryo is moving towards certain action, certain destination, certain end, or not? You see there is a movement which is very carefully geared towards some end. It may not lead to that. That's not important. We said even in human beings, sometimes we don't reach our end. But what is important, you see that this growth and development of embryo is moving towards a certain point. And when it's growing, it becomes more and more capable of meeting its needs. That's enough. So in other words, this is the conclusion of this discussion. If you mean by having ghaya to be thinking and conscious of ghaya and doing things intentionally to reach ghaya, this would not apply to plants and maybe even animals to some extent, to wind, to water, to these things would not apply because they are not conscious of what they do. They don't have will. But if you are satisfied with two things, that this agent is moving towards a certain aim, it's moving. We are not saying it's understanding. We are not saying understand. We are not saying the seed of apple understand and tries to become apple tree. We don't say it's understanding. We don't say it has will. But we cannot deny that this apple seed has a journey which is clearly defined in front of it. And it's moving towards that end. And if it reaches that end, becomes more perfect. Do you deny that? So in this sense, we can say there is ghaya. But not in the sense of al-illah al-ghaa'iyyah, in the sense that thinks about it and gets motivated. This is where some philosophers, disagree. Some philosophers have spoken as if everything has understanding. But we say no. Everything has an end, but not al-ghaa'iyyah. These are two different things. Human beings have end, and al-ghaa'iyyah, other things have end, but not al-ghaa'iyyah necessarily. Is it clear?
Yes.
So, the last sentence is this. The reality of ghaya is a more perfect form of existence of something which is moving towards more actualization. So something is moving towards more perfection, actualizing its potentials. So this is ghaya. This much might be enough for now. The part about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as I said, is to be discussed in theology, and we already have discussed it in other books. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. If you have questions now, we can ask.